Welcome, everyone, to the Irish Breakdown Podcast. Going to give you all a little bit of recruiting insight and preview what is sure to be another important weekend for the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, the third of three consecutive recruiting weekends in the month of June that are really going to shape what we know of the 2024 Notre Dame recruiting class when all is said and done. This weekend, I would like to kind of phrase it as clarity. You should get some clarity of the linebacker positions and the safety positions for Notre Dame in 2024. A couple of very important recruits that will be on campus, very small group. But I want to start us out with some recent news. On Thursday, there was an evaluation camp that Notre Dame had hosted on their campus. 150 plus athletes from all across the country in the 2024, 2025, 2026 class all flocked to Notre Dame to be able to get in front of the Notre Dame coaches, some with Notre Dame offers already to date, some with Notre Dame interest, some guys that were trying to get on the Notre Dame radar. And we were met with a lot of optimism. There were some players, of course, that were not able to make the trip. But our guy, Brian Driscoll, was on campus for the evaluation camp, said that there were some legitimately good football players, some guys that could potentially fit at Notre Dame. We saw a list of guys that had already received offers from the University of Notre Dame, guys like Justin Thurman and Dominic Kulak out of the state of Chicago. Justin Thurman, of course, is out of the state of Florida. Very talented running back who Brian said was probably the most impressive athlete on tap. And we were met with a lot of offers that were extended after the evaluation camp. Some 2025, some 2026. But I want to focus on one individual in particular that received an offer on Thursday after his performance at Notre Dame's evaluation camp in the 2024 class at safety. Tabron Benny Powell, who is a safety out of Lakota West in the state of Ohio. If Lakota West sounds familiar, that's because it is the same high school as Ben Minnick, who is the star safety out of the 2023 class that signed with Notre Dame, early enrollee. Obviously was dealing with a little bit of injury during the spring that cost him the second half of the spring, but a good safety, obviously, in the 2023 class that Notre Dame was able to sign. They extended an offer after Tabron Benny Powell had his performance. Obviously, what they had seen on campus, which was, from what we have hearing from Brian's report, from some other people that I've been able to talk to, was a little bit of a mixed performance. Obviously, it was enough for Notre Dame to extend that offer. A player that they had been in contact with before and were very heavily anticipating him getting on campus. Tabron performed, left the Notre Dame campus with an offer from the University of Notre Dame. It's a very interesting one, and one that I am looking forward to seeing how things progress. Because if you pop on the film from Lakota West last year, I already mentioned Ben Minnick, but they also had Malik Hartford, who signed with Ohio State in the 2023 class, a star safety, one of the top safeties in the 2023 class. They had two legitimate four-star level safeties that are playing both at Notre Dame and Ohio State now. So there wasn't really room at safety for Tabron Benny Powell. So what did they do? Clearly, he was a good enough football player where they needed to find some way to get him on the field. So if you turn on his film for 2022 season, you're going to see him playing kind of a rover outside linebacker role. He's playing near the line of scrimmage a ton. You're going to see his impact in the run game. And now moving to 2023, the expectation, and we literally had a coach post this yesterday about Tabron Benny Powell, that he was asked to play a role out of necessity, because we knew Hartford, we knew Minnick, we needed to get Tabron Benny Powell on the field on defense. So they played him on the second level a ton. The expectation is going into his senior year, he is going to get moved back to a traditional safety role. So you're going to see him more on the third level, which I think will get us a much more in-depth understanding of just how athletic he is, how much range he has, and what type of impact he can make at the safety position. Regardless, Notre Dame clearly likes Tabron Benny Powell. He's clearly a player that they are taking a long look at, extending an offer. And at this point, I believe that Notre Dame is going to push for Tabron Benny Powell in the 2024 class, excuse me. Safety position has had a lot of question marks during this process. They have a commitment from Kennedy Urlacher, star safety out of the state of Arizona, Chandler High School. They also feel good about their position with Bronte Johnson, safety out of the state of Indiana, who is making his college decision on June 24th, so only a couple days away from now. He will be making his decision. Outside of that, there are several question marks, and one that we'll be able to get a better feel for after this weekend. You have Oliver Miles, who visited last week, who there was just some question marks about whether he likes Notre Dame enough and is comfortable enough to go away from home, obviously him being a Texas kid. We knew the whole Paul Menke situation, obviously now him committed to Duke. So we are sitting here, and of course, Davis Andrews is another top safety on the board out of the state of Utah. The issue with Davis Andrews is that Davis Andrews is more than likely going to take a LDS mission. So with that in mind, he is not going to have an immediate return. He's not going to be able to help you in the 2024 season. He's more 2026 if everything still checks out and he's still able to be a part of the program at that point. If he does even choose Notre Dame, that's still a little bit up in the air. Obviously, he took his official visit here pretty recently. I was told that he had a great time. He took the visit while I was on my paternity leave, but I'll have a little bit more on that, obviously, as we move forward. And we'll have more on the Tabron Penny-Powell situation and the recruitments moving forward here, because I anticipate things moving pretty quickly with Benny Powell. But an important visitor, it's a perfect segue into this weekend, because there's a safety that's going to be on campus that we are told, and we feel, that regardless if they end up taking and closing on to Tabron Penny-Powell, they would take Malcolm Ziegler, who is a star safety out of the state of North Carolina, a player that was only offered last month, but a player that Notre Dame has been keeping close tabs on for some time now. They have been down to see him a couple different times during the open period, ability to go down and see him in person. And then obviously they extended the offer a month ago. A young man that is a very good track athlete out of the state of North Carolina. He reports a 4.38 40-yard dash, which I do believe when you watch his film, speed pops off. And he is a true free safety type. He's a kid that makes a lot of plays on the football, really good speed on the third level. He's a guy that I am comfortable playing from depth and making some plays in the passing game. And Notre Dame is going to make a hard push for him. 6'2", 185 pounds out of the state of North Carolina. This is where we are coming into this visit, though, with Malcolm Ziegler. Hasn't been on the board incredibly long. There is a feeling that Notre Dame really likes Malcolm Ziegler and the upside that he has. There is also the feeling that Malcolm Ziegler likes Notre Dame, but this one is one that you're getting in a little bit late here. The North Carolina schools, some of the other Southern schools that have been on Malcolm just a bit longer, some Virginia schools, Virginia Tech, they have been on Malcolm Ziegler now for a while. So there is intrigue coming into this visit for Malcolm Ziegler. But have you heard me talk in the past? There's a big difference between intrigue and legitimate interest. This feels eerily similar to the Micah Gilbert situation, where Micah Gilbert liked Notre Dame, had a good opinion of Notre Dame, but things didn't get serious for both sides, or for Micah Gilbert's side of things, until he took the official visit and got on campus at Notre Dame for the Blue Gold game. After that, it was a foregone conclusion. The fit made sense, and everyone was obviously comfortable, and Notre Dame wanted Micah Gilbert in the class. I feel similarly, and we feel similarly about the Malcolm Ziegler situation. I think there's a world where Malcolm Ziegler comes to town, absolutely loves it. It's a great fit, and Notre Dame could become a legitimate contender for Malcolm Ziegler. Or it could just be a good visit, and it could not be enough to catch up ground because you are working from behind. That's naturally where you are in this recruitment for a player that you've only been on seriously, with an offer at least, for about a month. So showing that interest, showing he's a priority, showing Malcolm Ziegler that he is a player that Notre Dame needs and wants in this class is big time. And then selling the fits, being a student athlete at the University of Notre Dame, Those things all really matter. So this one, I think there's one other visit that I would say is probably the most important this weekend. But Malcolm Ziegler one, I don't want to undersell this one. This one's huge for the 2024 class for Notre Dame. Because if there's a world where you end up taking Kennedy Urlacher, Bronte Johnson, Malcolm Ziegler, and you get to Bron Benny Powell, while there were some misses and it was a long road to get to where you ended up, still ends up being a very good safety class and a much needed class in terms of depth and impact talent with guys like Bronte Johnson and Malcolm Ziegler. So this weekend is going to be massive for Ziegler. Get him on campus, show him the magic of Notre Dame, and hopefully you come out of the weekend in a much different position than where you are heading into it. Now, if you ask me what is the most important visit this weekend, I would say it is Kingston Villiamoasa, who is star linebacker out of St. John Bosco in Bellflower, California, 6'2", plus 225 pounds, top 100 recruit by multiple platforms, as high as the number 35 player in the country by one platform. Linebacker recruiting, like safety that I just mentioned, has had some major question marks and some just it's been interesting is the best word that I can use for it. Because you have been after some talented football players. And I think you have a couple talented players in the class. Right now, sitting today, you have Bodie Cahoon, linebacker out of the state of Virginia, Patrick Henry High School, in the class. A young man that is 6'2", 220 pounds, has reportedly been timed electronically at 4.54 in the 40, has a safety background. I really like Bodie Cahoon. I think that he has legitimate upside. And you also took Teddy Rizak in this class, state of Nebraska, another player that has been timed in the mid 4.5s, 6'3.5", 6'4", 190 pounds. He's going to be looked at as your rover early on in Notre Dame's defense, and then you're going to see how his body develops to see if he's potentially a will option in the middle of the defense for Notre Dame. Two high upside players, or two players that have legitimate upside, but the floors are maybe not where you want them to be. Because right now, Teddy Rizak is a skinny player that needs to add, obviously, mass and power to his frame. And Bodie Cahoon, while I think the upside is tremendous, he's only been playing linebacker for half a season. So there are some question marks about what he is going to be linebacker long-term here for Notre Dame. You need a guy that is an easy answer. You need the floor. And while I also think that Kingston Villiamoasa could also be a very good linebacker at the next level. I mean, there's a reason that he is rated as a top 100 recruit. He brings that floor to the table. He has been a young man that people in recruiting circles have known about since he was in junior high. And he's been reeling in offers for years and years and years, a player that Notre Dame has been on for a long time now. You headed into the month of June with an understanding that you are a top 3 school for Kingston Villiamoasa. USC, which he took an official visit to last weekend. Notre Dame, which he's taking an official visit to this weekend. And then he's ending the month with Ohio State next weekend. So Notre Dame, USC, Ohio State. Coming into the month, I was adamant, and I've been adamant for a while. I believe that USC was the clear third in that pecking order, and I believe that it was a Notre Dame-Ohio State battle. We have been told that USC took a really nice move this past weekend, really did a great job, obviously, recruiting, so they are more in the game than maybe what they were previously. But I ultimately still think this is a Notre Dame-Ohio State battle. There's been some jockeying back and forth too. There's been some, and honestly, there's some days where I'm convinced that Notre Dame is the leader. There's other days where I'm convinced Ohio State's the leader. I think this one could still go either way. There are some that believe that this is more of an Ohio State lean, which could be very well possible. Regardless, Notre Dame comes into this weekend in a 3-way dogfight, and I still think it's a head-to-head matchup with Ohio State to land a linebacker that you want and a linebacker that you need in the 2024 class. Kingston is a tremendous fit potentially with Notre Dame. Not only is he a Mike linebacker, a guy that fits your defense perfectly, a guy that you need more of in this class because you have J.D. Bertrand in the short term. After that, you're talking about Drake Bowen, who's a tremendous player of the 2023 class, but you still need to find more true Mikes on your roster. And that would be Kingston Villiamoasa. So being able to really sell it this weekend because he fits personally so well. He's a high academic kid. He really values his education. He's a spiritual young man that his religion means a lot to him. All those things are a big pull to the Notre Dame side of things. But this is not a shallow recruitment. This is one where Kingston has been doing his homework for a long time in all these schools, and it's going to be every part of this conversation. It's going to be relationships. It's going to be ability to play on the college level. It's going to be development to play in the NFL. It's going to be a spirituality. This is the master of all senses and vantage points for a guy like Kingston Viliamu-Asa. And that should play in Notre Dame's favor. But where you are now is you have one shot left to convince Kingston, coming back on campus, that this is the place that he needs to be. And if you ended this linebacker class with Kingston Viliamu-Asa in here, with the high upside of Bodie Cahoon and Teddy Rizak, then I feel a lot better about the linebacker group. If you miss on Kingston, then you have to pivot. And the pivot could still be to a good football player. We mentioned Bradley Shaw, who was on campus last weekend that Notre Dame, I think, made a really nice push for. He's out of Hoover High School in the state of Alabama. But another player to keep an eye on, and the last official visitor of uncommitted players, because Micah Gilbert's also going to be on campus. I forgot to mention it during the segments on Malcolm Ziegler, how important I think it is and really tactical from Notre Dame to be able to get Micah Gilbert on campus, who's also a North Carolina kid. I think that that's very, very smart on their regard. But the last player on campus who plays linebacker, Keyshawn Flowers, out of the state of Maryland. Young man that it's kind of a wild card. It really is. There's a lot of questions here because Notre Dame really likes Keyshawn Flowers. And obviously Keyshawn Flowers likes Notre Dame enough that he scheduled an official visit to the University of Notre Dame. So there's intrigue there. But similar to what I said about Malcolm Ziegler, is this legitimate? Is this a place that Keyshawn Flowers can really see himself fitting? Because as we're sitting right now, there are several schools. I point to Miami, point to Virginia Tech, could point to a few other ACC and even a couple SEC schools that have been on Keyshawn for a long time and are assumed to be higher on the list than Notre Dame. Notre Dame has an opportunity, and they need to hit this one out of the park. That's my first time saying it, so don't make fun of me. They need to, because if you hit on Kingston Viliamu-Asa, the linebacker board is very small from what it is right now. Could it expand at some point? It's always possible. But after that, we're talking about Bradley Shaw. We're talking about Keyshawn Flowers. That's really the board at that point if you miss on Kingston Viliamu-Asa. So having a great visit with a guy like Keyshawn Flowers, showing him the full world. Because let's be honest, there's a lot of players that are interested in Notre Dame, but then they come on campus and it's a completely different animal. And they get the full sense. Getting on campus is really a different level of understanding of what Notre Dame can bring. So again, they could hit it out of the park with Keyshawn Flowers this weekend. They could become a legitimate player for him. Or they could have another miss on the linebacker board, which they've had way too many misses in the 2024 class. So Kingston is the priority, but having a great visit with Keyshawn Flowers to hopefully move the needle enough to get into that top group or hopefully be the leader coming out of the weekend, that will be important. We are sitting here with the third big weekend of the month of June. Going to be huge for Kingston Viliamu-Asa, Malcolm Ziegler, and Keyshawn Flowers for Notre Dame to really make moves with those players, because the board, sitting here with 19 recruits, the board is drying up quick. Notre Dame's class is becoming solidified in a hurry. Make sure, because you're going to have some weekend recruiting intel, of course. Go to boards.irishbreakdown.com if you're not already signed up. Would imagine on Sunday, if worse, Monday morning. You'll have some insight on Kingston. You'll have some insight on Keyshawn. You'll have some insight on Malcolm Ziegler. Micah Gilbert's visit this weekend as well. Official visit, obviously, the Notre Dame commit in the class wide receiver. You'll have all that and more at irishbreakdown.com. But in order to get that intel early, go to boards.irishbreakdown.com. We'll also be back on Monday for Notre Dame Recruiting Hour to really update everything that has happened this past weekend. So I want to thank you all. Ryan Roberts, Director of Recruiting here at irishbreakdown.com. We'll talk to you again very soon on the Irish Breakdown Podcast.